And welcome back, everybody, to Two Goalies, One Mic, episode 168, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room with over 300 beers to choose from. For all your happy hour needs, whether you're out with friends, trying to enjoy a Sabres or a Bills game, make sure you go check out Fatty Beer and try one of my favorites, the FEA beer. Buffalo Go Apparel, our second sponsor. BuffaloGo.com, at BuffaloCo on Instagram and Twitter. They have some of the best options, especially when it comes to the Bills for all your apparel needs, with your shirts, your hats, your hoodies. They have everything, and they have some of our stuff on there too. Maybe you could check it out. The 39 Dominic Hasek snapback hat, the Letterman hat. They have an RJ1 too. A couple other options, pretty cool. And here we go, episode 168. Hurls, a nice 3-game winning streak for the Buffalo Sabres since we last talked. Unfortunately came to an end last night.
Yeah, all good things come to an end, especially a good thing that happened 4 months earlier than it did last season in terms of the Sabres winning 3 games compared to February of the 2023-2024 season. I think this past game was a little bit different from that first Panthers game, given that Tkachuk, Barkov, and Bobrovsky were all playing in the second one after missing the first game. So I think he probably knew it was going to be a bit tougher of a game. And they were in it by all means, 2-2 in the second period. But as Lindy said, there were some costly mental errors and some mistakes that led to that game eventually getting away from them and getting out of hand and ending the streak. So 4 games would have been nice. Staying in the Atlantic Division race at the moment would have been nice. But as we've talked about, we're only 10 games in, and it is October still. So all things considered, given the start to the season that the Sabres had, 1-4-1, 4-5-1 at the 10 game mark. Obviously, some stuff to figure out, but it's not the worst spot to be in, and I think they can build on it from here.
Yeah. First comment in the peanut gallery: bring back Andrew Peters and Craig Rea. You guys are boring. Thank you, Bills Duane.
Wow, is that your alter ego?
I don't know. We've been live for, well, technically been live for a few minutes, but we actually, us, me and you have been live for 45 seconds and we're already boring. Sorry, Bills Duane.
We are all
wish we could make you happy, bud. Sorry.
We are all Bills Duane.
We are all Bills Duane. There it is. It sucks. I mean, you played a healthy Florida Panthers team. You came up short in a game. I think they could have won. I think the game was right there for them for the taking. And unfortunately, they couldn't play a full 60 minutes like they had the previous 3 games where they did win. I thought they dominated in the second period. I thought the first period was, even though the period ended 2-0, I thought the Sabres had a better period than the score said. I didn't like the first goal from UPL, but me and you as goalies, we've been there on a man rush, a 2-on-1 where we kind of get frozen up. I think what happened there, UPL thought the pass was going right back, and I don't think he was really expecting the shot there. Maybe Bovequist looked off. I forget who made the pass. It was Verhaeghe, maybe. I don't know. But he looked off. I think UPL was expecting a pass back and was anticipating that, and he got frozen up, and it was an easy goal. And then I didn't like the Bennett goal, but by no means was that a UPL is at fault game. I thought there was plenty of blame to go around for sure.
Yeah, I would say that he earned that 4th straight start after the 3-game winning streak, and it's good to ride the hot goalie as they did in the second half of last season. And I think he's at his best when he gets more opportunities and he can get more confidence and he can get onto a streak and build that consistency. I would say both UPL and Levi have not been their absolute best to begin the year. Levi had 2 solid starts before obviously not having the greatest start in the last game that he played. So I think it's a combination of different things. I think the defense obviously can be a little bit better. And of course the forwards can as well. You're getting a lot of production from one line, and then the rest of these guys, aside from Ryan McLeod, mostly aren't producing at a high clip. Jason Zucker has brought the power play to life, thankfully, with 2 power play goals. But yeah, it's a combination of a few different things, and where they are currently is what their record shows. They're not one of the worst teams in the league, but they're definitely not one of the best. And I would say after 10 games, looking at it 4-5-1, I think we all would have taken that, especially after the start in the first 3 games, going 0-3. So I would say November is definitely a winnable stretch of games. Our friends on the non-boring podcast After the Whistle said today that if they could win 10 of those 14 games,
Yep.
it would be an accomplishment for the team. And I think that would obviously be great. But I do think it's within reach given the schedule that I saw and the types of teams that they're going to play. It's going to be a lot of run and gun hockey. I think this team does pretty well with that. I think we're getting back to the chaotic territory that we saw during the 2022-2023 season. And yeah, some more timely saves and some better coverage in front of the net would be helpful to that.
Not leaving a 57 goal scorer alone in front. You mean that kind of poor coverage in front of the net?
Yeah, that would be ideal not to have. And it's a two-way street. Obviously, goalies want to make every save we possibly can, but that's not always possible. So having, especially even from Dahlin, I think he would say himself that he hasn't had his best start to the year defensively. I think he's coming back from that injury he suffered in training camp, and he's starting to get back to the level that we all know he can be. Even the goal the other night, I think that kind of showed where his confidence is at as a player, and him getting back to his confident, creative offensive self, especially in the offensive zone. And I think he's going to be a little bit more physical and more responsible in his own end as well. But it's not just him. Obviously, Samuelsson had a pretty tough start. Owen Power's likely been our best defenseman for the first 10 games of the year. And then the rest of these guys, like, they've done all right, but no one's been perfect. And I don't think any one of us would have expected that.
No, definitely not. I think Dahlin, that was probably one of the worst games we've seen him play in quite some time. I mean, yeah, he scored a goal and it was a pretty goal, but I thought defensively he cost us more than he helped us, in my opinion, at least. Just obviously a dumb penalty there at the end to let them get away. It was a 1-goal game at the time, and obviously you make no mistake about it. Rasmus Dahlin is your most talented player. There is no doubt about it. Tage Thompson could score 50 goals this season, but I still think that Rasmus Dahlin is your best player. He's your franchise player. He's your captain. For that guy to make that type of a mistake and take himself off the ice that late in a game, 7 minutes left in a 1-goal game, for 4 minutes or less, it's stupid. It's dumb. And you got to be better than that. You got to have more control of your stick. And then the play you mentioned with the Reinhart goal, we learned that stuff in travel hockey, that, you don't chase behind the net. You don't leave your man. Like, Samuelsson was hip to hip with Barkov, and maybe Barkov still gets that pass off. But at least Dahlin's there on his man. I personally think that Dahlin cost you more than UPL. And again, I'm not mad at Rasmus Dahlin. I was, but it's not something that I expect to continue, to your point. But yeah, there's a lot of, and I know Lindy was fired up in the post game. He wasn't afraid to name names. He named Rasmus. He wasn't afraid to call his captain. Andrew talked about this with us. He is not afraid to hold guys accountable, whether it's in a video room or in a post game presser. And you'll see it, dude. How often did you see Don Granato say a player by name, like in the way that Lindy did in the post game? You just don't. He never really did. Whether that was maybe not his style or maybe just a fear of doing that. Lindy's not afraid to do stuff like that. And these guys are going to, if they haven't already found out, they're going to find out quick that he is not afraid to put you on blast if it's deserved. I do want to talk about, I think it's the big elephant in the room. It's the biggest topic on Sabres Twitter right now. Dylan Cousins and Jack Quinn.
Yeah, they have not been great. They have not been great by any stretch of the imagination. I would say they've largely been pretty bad. And that could be for a variety of different reasons, whether it's injury, lack of confidence, just general bad luck, lack of production. I think in Cousins' case, it's more bad luck than it is him just being a bad hockey player. He's had a lot of opportunities, as he did last year. They're not necessarily the most amazing opportunities, but he is getting to the net. He is one of the league, not the league leaders, but he's one of the team leaders in shots on goal. So he's getting scoring chances. He's getting to the net, but he obviously hasn't converted yet. And I do think that'll come for him because you don't just score 30 goals as a 22-year-old and then just completely lose your scoring touch in the NHL. I do think it's going to come. Whereas Jack Quinn, I do think is still recovering a little bit from the two pretty serious injuries, lower leg injuries that he suffered last season, coming off an Achilles, and then what it felt like it was a broken ankle after that is not necessarily the easiest thing to come back from as a hockey player. And he looks a little bit slow. It looks like he's not moving his feet, and he's also not really creating his own shot or having any type of shot creation that we've seen from him in the past. I think we all expected him to score a good amount of goals, maybe 25 plus this season, because that's what he's done. Even when he came back from his second injury his first injury last season, he did that a lot at 5-on-5, and he was really, really good at it. So I think it's a combination of those two things blending together, and also just a general lack of confidence and speed at the moment. But I don't.
He looks slow. Jack Quinn does look slow.
He does look slow. I think we've discussed it a few times. Splitting them up is probably not the worst idea. I think potentially just trying a couple line combinations, maybe putting Ryan McLeod up there on Cousins' wing, as we've talked about. He did really well with Draisaitl when he was in Edmonton on the wing. He's obviously been a pretty good center, but just switching it up and getting those two apart maybe could do the second and third line some good. Obviously, you've seen some good production from the third line. Of course, Zach Benson is not healthy at the moment, but even when he comes back, that could potentially make it a little bit easier. But at the moment, those two aren't working by themselves or together, and it may be time for a change.
I mean, would you try Dylan Cousins on the top line? I mean, I know you don't want to break up the great chemistry Tage, Tuck, and Paterka have had, but at what point you're not – listen, you don't have Connor McDavid on your hockey team. You don't have Leon Draisaitl on your hockey team. Like, Connor McDavid literally carried the Edmonton Oilers to the Stanley Cup Finals last year on his back, and they still couldn't get it done with the greatest player that may have ever played the game, potentially. So, like, you just can't sit here and continuously night in and night out depend on one line to always show up on your score sheet. So, for me, I think that is the move. Like, if you're trying to get Dylan Cousins some confidence or Jack Quinn some confidence, I'm more leaning towards Dylan Cousins because I just don't think Jack Quinn can keep up with that speed right now. He doesn't look like he can. I wouldn't mind Dylan Cousins on that top line on the wing. Drop JJ down. Let JJ maybe drive that line from the wing with Jack Quinn, and whoever you slide in out the middle. Maybe it is McLeod or it's Krebs. And just just try something different, because I think that Dylan Cousins is getting the chances. He's just not finishing. And you can just see it in his facial expressions, just his reactions to certain plays. He is a guy that just doesn't have an answer right now. And he doesn't know. Like, I feel like he's doing all the things he's supposed to be doing. He just can't find an answer right now.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. I'm partial to not breaking up that top line, given how good they've been and how productive and they've had so much chemistry, obviously. I think McLeod and Cousins could be a good pairing, given the amount of speed and skill from both of them that we've seen in the past. I think McLeod could really match Cousins' level in terms of compete and getting to pucks and getting to open areas. I don't necessarily think it's the worst idea to take some responsibility off Cousins' plate and put him at wing, but he has been a center for most of his career, and he largely has been a pretty good center, especially 2 seasons ago and parts of last season once he started to figure it out a little bit more. So I think the main point is that there are some options for him to really get him going in a productive sense. Whereas Quinn, I do think it's just going to take a little bit more time. And if the training staff is clearing him, that's obviously one thing. I think it's also mental for him at this point, coming back from those 2 injuries and getting to a point where he can create his own shot and he can be confident. That really, really creative, good offensive player we've seen from him in the past. So more than anything, you got to do something to spark these 2 guys, because they're not going to be able to stay at this 500 or even better pace without any type of production from either one, which currently is 1 goal between the 2 of them, and it's an empty net goal from Jack Quinn. So,
yeah. One comment here from Gar. Only other thing is maybe trying to, and I know you've mentioned this before, maybe you do reunite the kid line, because that did have a lot of chemistry. Yeah, I just think that anybody could really, not anybody, but I think Tage and Tuck are so good together and always have been that you could throw another guy up there maybe it's Kulik. And those two won't miss a step.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They're talented enough players, and they do so many things well that if you throw a guy on the left line, on the left wing on that line, I do think they could still be productive. But those three together have been one of the best lines in the NHL. So that's a tough thing to break up, just because you're trying to get a spark from the other guys who, at this point in their careers, especially Dylan Cousins and Jack Quinn, should hopefully be able to do that by themselves. But if we get to 15 games in and they're still with one goal between the two of them, something's got to give, and you got to switch it up.
Another potential solution here is move him to the wing. Krebs centering Kulik and Quinn, whoever is. I'm assuming he's saying move Cousins to the wing, have Krebs center Kulik or Quinn, whoever is playing better. I'm assuming that's what that means. Again, not opposed to
it. The nice thing about this team is that you have a good amount of depth. You have guys that can play different positions and move them around and try to do things that work. It's a tough proposition to think about breaking up Tage, Tuck, and Peterka at the moment, given how well they're playing.
Did you say they have a good amount of depth, or do you mean just flexibility with players?
Flexibility in terms of like who
I wouldn't say they have depth, but maybe
not
flexibility.
Depth, yeah.
Sure, yeah,
exactly, yeah. In terms of like up and down the lineup, like guys that can slot in at different positions and play different, playing different scenarios. That's what I meant by that. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's like you said, it's the hot topic at the moment, and it's something you got to figure out relatively quickly because confidence is a big thing. And if these guys keep going game in and game out, losing it, it's not going to be a good and a productive thing moving forward.
Would you put Jack Quinn in the press box next game? I think he's the one of the two that you probably put in there first.
I would. I mean, I would rather see him with other line mates before putting him in the press box. But if you were to put him with two other people or a different set of a center and a left wing, and he's still not productive, yeah, maybe sit him down for a couple games and let him work through it up there and on video and in the training room to get his game back.
Because I mentioned this on Twitter last night. Like I was more focused on Cousins. I said, and it's not even as punishment with Cousins. It's like maybe you just need to sit and watch and just reevaluate and just take a breath. It's not even a punishment, man. It's just, I mean, Lindy's done that in the past. He's done that. And it's worked. So I know it's a different generation of hockey player. It's a different era. But if you sit the guy down and say, hey, like, this isn't a punishment. I just want you to sit up there and watch and just reevaluate. Yeah. Just watch the plays open up in front of you from up top and, just think about things, there's a lot of, you can just tell there's a ton of pressure. He feels the pressure of that contract. That's my opinion. He does. And he's not performing to the level that he needs to perform for this team to win hockey games. And when you're one of the highest paid players in the teams, that pressure can get to a guy. So taking a step back, not as a punishment, but just to watch, it might not be a bad idea. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And I don't think, as you said, Lindy would be opposed to that whatsoever. And hopefully each guy wouldn't take it as a shot and as punishment.
Yeah.
Because at this point, like, if you have 0 goals through 10 games and you're Dylan Cousins, like, you got to know something's off.
Yeah.
And you gotta know that you need to do something to figure it out. And I personally think they're both good enough hockey players that they'll be able to within the right situation or with a little bit more time. But if this continues down into game 15 and game 20, and it's still the same formula and still the same production, then yeah, maybe that's the solution for a little bit.
Does Levi get the next start?
I would say after 4 straight from UPL. What is that, Friday?
Yeah, they play the Islanders, which would be a good game for me.
It's either they go back to UPL for that game. He's getting one of the two this weekend regardless. So it's whatever they feel better about. So you have the Islanders on Friday, and then you have the Red Wings on Saturday. So it's one of the two. It's whatever you feel comfortable with, whoever plays better in practice this week. If you feel relatively good about where UPL is, especially after a tough game last night where, yeah, it wasn't his best game, but it also wasn't completely his fault. Maybe you give him Friday, and then you go to Levi the next day on the back-to-back. So I think either combination the entire team would be good with, and whatever Mike Dales is feeling, whatever the coaching staff thinks is the best solution. But yeah, it's been a while since we've seen Levi, and I think that's probably been good for him too. Obviously, that was a pretty tough game against Columbus, and that was coming off two really, really quality starts as well. So
Yeah.
he's probably had a lot of time to work with Mike Dales and get on the ice and take a lot of shots. And also, as you said, watch UPL from the bench and watch what it takes to be a consistent NHL goalie, which is what we need from both of them at the moment. But given the current transition and the current structure of both of them, it's obviously UPL is the main starter. So I'm good with either, but I think if I had to guess, it'll be UPL on Friday and then Levi on Saturday.
This is good. Mauricio's got our back. Connor and Duane are not boring. Am I still invited to the pool party?
Thanks, Mauricio. Appreciate your support.
Appreciate your support. He's always here, so I mean, he must think we're doing something right.
Yeah, definitely not.
Both these guys are always here for us. Yeah, I think Levi should get the next start. We talked about it after that Columbus game. You know, like sometimes you're just pucks aren't gonna bounce your way. You're not gonna track everything. Like it happens. Even great goalies like Bobrovsky have bad games. It just happens. It happened to Levi. I think that this fan base is just so wants a legitimate number 1A that the second that a guy like UPL just did for 3 games in a row plays well enough to win, that it's very disheartening to see a game like we saw last night from UPL. And then, we know this fan base is quick to turn on a goalie. It just is, based on 10 years of just piss poor goaltending. But I think the one good thing about Levi that I wish I probably saw more in UPL's game is that he doesn't let a bad game or a bad goal linger. He's, very big time next shot mentality. And he doesn't let the pressure of another guy who is competing for the same job he is really get to him. We've seen this before with him in his short career so far, where he does have a rough game, comes back and he plays phenomenal the next one. All like last season, the start of last season, starting the way that things did. He gets sent down to Rochester, and he even admitted it was good for him. Comes back on a few times where he needed a spot fill, and he played great multiple times. Beat Vegas, beat Toronto, beat LA. So yeah, I think that this is a good opportunity for Devin Levi to get in there and get a W, get things back on track in his development. And to your point, let UPL sit back and watch. I think it's good. I've been there. You've probably been there. It sucks not being in that, but sometimes it's a good thing.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think it's important for the coaching staff to communicate with these guys and let them know where their heads are at. I think obviously getting on a streak was great for UPL. 3 games in a row is nothing to sneeze at. But even with this time off, I don't think it's out of the question. I mean, who knows how they're going to handle it, but there's 2 games in 2 days. So one's going to get one and one's going to get the other. And I don't think either guy is going to take negatively to who gets what. I really don't. And I'm completely comfortable with whoever gets each game. And we'll see how they handle it. But for the most part, I would say in the first 10 games, it's been 7 for UPL, 3 for Levi. And the schedule hasn't been the most normal by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, you start over in the Czech Republic, and then you have a big layoff, and then you come home, and then you've had 2 more big layoffs in between these games. It's been a little bit strange, and it's led itself to not necessarily the most normal goalie rotation either. So getting these guys in a groove, I think, is important, and I do think that's going to happen because I think both of these guys are way more talented than they've shown this far.
No, I again, goaltending is like the last thing I'm worried about with this hockey team. I think that the future looks bright. I've compared it a couple times to the Swayman Olmark situation in Boston, what it could be, and that's not a bad problem to have at all. One question. How long does Kevin wait until he looks for a trade to fix the top 6? If this persists with that second line, does it happen? Does it? I mean, does he continue to hope for development and just hope that these guys figure it out themselves? Like, how long does he wait?
Well, the trade deadline's obviously not until March, but to be in a relatively good position for the playoffs, you got to be within 4 to 6 points by the end of this calendar year. So that leaves us about 2 months to see what happens with this team. I think, as Andrew and Craig mentioned, November is going to be a huge month, not only for the guys that need to get it going, but for the team and the roster construction as well. So I think Kevin is probably obviously watching really closely in terms of what's going to happen here. And if you get to game to 15 to game 20 and there's still that middling production from the middle of the lineup, I think he has to be taking calls. He's got to at least shop around some of these prospects and some of these picks to improve this team right now, which after a pretty horrendous start is by no means out of it. And that's what the entire fan base was worried about, getting off to another bad start and getting in a hole too early on to the point where they wouldn't be able to get out of it by the end of November. And November's here, and of the 14 games in November, you've got 9 to 10 very, very winnable ones. So you could get out of November at 14, 10, and 1 potentially if you win the games that you're supposed to win based upon what we've seen so far. So if that happens, I think he probably doesn't need to make a trade at that point. And also that probably lends itself to believe that these guys started to figure it out a little bit. So I think it really is results-based. We know it's a results-based business, but these next 5 to 10 games are really important in terms of not only the future of the hockey team this season, but the future of this hockey team moving forward.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you more. I think that if we get to Thanksgiving and Dylan Cousins is sitting at what's a good turnaround number for you for Dylan Cousins by Thanksgiving?
So that would be about 20 games in, right?
Yeah, he's got 3 points right now.
He's at 4 points.
So 3 or 4 points. Well, it doesn't matter.
Even if he gets to 10, I'd be happy.
So you'd be happy if he has 10 points by Thanksgiving. That's a month.
Okay. Well, 10 points in 20 games, given how he started, right? Of course, it hasn't been great, but I would at least be happy with 7 points in the next 10 games from him. I think a lot of people would.
Yeah. I mean, I would just like to see some type of resurgence from him.
Yeah, I mean, I that would be great, but I think it's tough to expect given what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I just, again, for me, if by Thanksgiving, if you don't have a combined, and I'm saying from this point on, from here until Thanksgiving, if you don't have a combined 18 to 20 points from both those players, I think you have problems. Personally,
yeah, you've got a problem, and then also that puts Kevin in a position where he's got to use the assets that aren't contributing to this team currently.
It's just not bringing up guys from Rochester anymore. You know what I mean? And hoping that you have to be able to part with your Noah Osland or your Isaac Rosine or, somebody else maybe they're not talking about. Ryan Johnson. What does Ryan Johnson got to do to get in this lineup? He's another left-handed defenseman and a logjam of left-handed defenseman. I'm not saying you got to rush this guy to the NHL, but he did show some flashes of being ready to play in the NHL last season. Is that a guy that you look to move? I don't know. He has value. He might be a solution to get you a guy. I understand players aren't always willing to lift a no trade clause or a no move clause, but at some point, man, you just can't sit on these prospects anymore. They're not all going to play for your team. It seems like they're pretty high on Yoki Haru sticking around. Samuelson's locked up for how long? You have Power locked up. You traded for Byram. Obviously, Dahling's a given. He's not going anywhere for a long time. So, where does Ryan Johnson fit into all this? To me, that's a guy I think you almost have to trade.
Yeah, I wouldn't say have to, but it's an intriguing proposition given his talent level and a lack of a clear path to the lineup at the moment. Connor Clifton's in the last year of his deal, so I would say that's a pretty clear path, right
he's
there.
He's a right-handed defenseman, is he not?
He is a right-handed defense. He is a right-handed defenseman, but
right-handed defenseman. You just can't.
Yeah.
You just can't have 5 defensemen that are all lefties and then 1 right-handed defenseman.
Of course. So yeah, no, it makes it a bit difficult, but Ryan, as you said, Ryan Johnson's incredibly young. He's really talented. He has a lot of proposition to be a starting NHL defenseman moving forward. And if you take those calls and there's something that you can add to your lineup right now, and maybe even if it's a right shot defenseman, I think you at least entertain that idea. I really, really like his game, though, and I think that he could be a guy that could add to this team a lot moving forward. There's the Sabres defensive prospect system isn't the best at the moment. I like a few guys down there, including Novikov and a few other guys down in Rochester. But, yeah, I don't know. I think just generally Kevin Adams needs to – if he's already not, and as we've said, we've given him credit for the McLeod trade. We've given him, I guess, some credit for the Byram and Middlestat trade, even though it's not necessarily looking unbelievable at the moment. I still think there's time to flesh that out. He has shown the ability to make NHL hockey trades when he feels like it's going to help his lineup and help the future of the team. So we'll see. By no means do I think it's out of the question of him doing something exactly like that, because he has shown us that he will.
Yeah. And, that Byram trade, it just keeps looking worse and worse. The more better Middlestat continues to play, 13 points in 10 games. He is playing with some high-level talent in Buffalo, but, he was putting up 60-plus points on this team, on the third line. So, I like Byram a lot. And I forget who it was. I think it was Kevin on Twitter, and we talked a little bit about it. And I think there was some confusion at first. We came to an agreement that, the trade, the Middlestat trading Middlestat for Byram would have made more sense if you replaced Middlestat's production and if you replaced Skinner's production with that $7 million, and they just didn't. And that's why I think people look at that trade and it's like a head scratch. Like, what are we doing here? Like why would you trade a guy, leave a void? And it's not like, I think he only got paid $6.5 million. Would you pay Casey Middlestat $6.5 million right now?
Yeah.
Then I just don't understand why we didn't. He wanted to be here. He said he wanted to be here. I'm not trying to sit here and look at the past, but it's a gaping hole on this team. Dylan Cousins didn't really show last season. I know you have money invested in him that you didn't need Casey Middlestat. I don't understand the logic of buying out Skinner and trading a guy who led your team in most offensive metrics last season if you weren't going to find a way to replace that production. They just didn't.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the cap space and not spending to that amount. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I think they are doing whatever they can to be competitive while being efficient financially. That's
really what it is.
That is the point blank period, and they're hoping for the best results. I think they were hoping for Dylan Cousins specifically to really take hold of that second center role. I think a lot of us were confident in Dylan Cousins taking hold of that role going into last season, and now we don't even know if he's going to be in the lineup 10 games from now. I think he probably will be, but even having that discussion is pretty problematic. So, yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. I think they at least helped it a little bit by getting Ryan McLeod and bringing him in and him playing as well as he did.
He's been a surprise.
He's been good. He's been really, really good. And I think he not only has a very, very high floor as a third line center, but I think his ceiling is the second line in any capacity. He's 23 years old. He's playing like his hair's on fire. He's from the area. He's originally from Mississauga, so he probably has some motivation to stay around and play closer to his family. So I currently love that move. Savoy's in the AHL. He didn't make the Oilers, so it's not like we gave up. Well, of course, he's a very good prospect, and he's still very young. But it's not like in the case of Middlestat that Savoy is lighting the world on fire. So
yeah, he's like a little bit less than a point per game player. I think he's like 5 or 6 points down there or something like that. Nothing crazy.
So I don't know, and I really do believe that McLeod, even with better line mates, as we talked about with Draisaitl, he could be even better than he is right now. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think that at least partially made up for the Middlestat deal. And you hope that Byram, I haven't hated this game, but I do think you need to see a little bit more from him. And then you go from there. But yeah, like I said, I don't think Adams is completely happy with this group at the moment.
Yeah.
And I do hope at least that some of that cap space, definitely not all of it, because we know they're not going to spend all of it, at least some of that case has been reserved for a situation like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. As we're sitting here recording, Ovechkin has scored goal. I think let me see. His goals number 8. What is it? Oh man, he's so close. Ovechkin has scored goals 856 and 857 in just the first period. So Greg Wyshynski's joking. I think he's trying to get the record this week. You think he gets the record this season?
What does he need to get to?
I think it's 892, is it not? I think he was like 41 goals away before tonight.
And these are his first goals of the season?
No. He had a couple. I think he only had like 2 goals, and now he's got like 4.
I think this season's tough. I think he gets it at the beginning of next year.
You think
at his
so?
age, to get 42, I think they're going to do whatever they can for him to get it this season, because I don't know how much time he actually has left as an NHL hockey player. But that would be very difficult for him to get 42 in a season. I don't even think he got that last year, and he was on fire for a good portion of last season.
It's now 3-1. Washington's playing the Rangers. Real-time updates here. Ovechkin before tonight has 39. Let me see here. He had, I believe it was 2 goals. So he had 2 goals and 5 points. So now he has 4 goals and 4 goals and 7 points in 8 games played. I don't know, man. Like you said, you need about 38 more goals from here on out the rest of the season. He doesn't have Nick Backstrom and shotgun anymore, so that makes it a little bit tougher.
Exactly. They are going to feed him, and he's going to get every single opportunity to get it. But with the level of goaltending there is in the NHL these days and the level of competition, even in their division, I think it's going to be tough. And that's provided he stays healthy the whole year too.
Here's a little trivia question for you, because I just saw it was like an interview they were doing with goalies. What active goaltender has Ovechkin scored against the most?
Just strictly based upon the amount of games played, Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yes. I think it's like 27. I think who else has given up quite a few?
Speaking of Flower, he is currently playing in Pittsburgh for the final time with the Wild. I think he said this is going to be his last year, and he is playing tonight in Pittsburgh. So
I saw a big flower arrangement, the number 29 flower arrangement on Twitter earlier. So I'm assuming that was obviously something made up by Pittsburgh, real classy. Yeah, I've loved. Did you see him jump on the ice with those kids at practice?
I didn't.
In Pittsburgh. So it was at the Excel, whatever practice rink they have. And there was a Penguins travel team. Like they're named after the Penguins. And Fleury, after his morning skate with Minnesota, decided to stay on with the kids for 10 minutes and take some shots.
He's the best, and I think he's proven that over and over again, that he's one of the coolest personalities in the game that we have today. He's one of the nicest people. He's really thoughtful and caring, and he's obviously also one of the best goalies of the past 20 years. He's proven it almost year in and year out, and for him to continue to do it at this age is really, really impressive.
He's the ultimate teammate, man. He's been in some really weird situations, like when he went to Vegas, winning the Vezina Trophy and then being traded immediately for literally nothing, for cap space pretty much. Playing very well in Minnesota, splitting time with Cam Talbot. I'm sure he had an opportunity to go to Pittsburgh if he wanted to, chose not to, chose to stay in Minnesota. It's hard to find. It's hard. You just can't not like Fleury, man. He's just Flower's just one of the most stand up active players in professional sports still. It'd be hard to find anybody that had a bad thing to say about him.
Yeah, agreed. He's one of my personal idols and favorite players of all time. And I think a lot of people would say the same thing.
Yeah, I think I still have a Fleury. Yeah, I have a Fleury from the inaugural season. I have a Fleury Golden Knights jersey in my closet too. It's pretty sharp too. Maybe I'll wear it for a game this year. Just a couple clicks for the guy. in his final year. First ballot Hall of Famer for sure, right? Like,
Yeah,
no
100%.
doubt. No
100%.
doubt. And how close is he? Is he second in wins? He's top
All
3.
time?
I'm pretty sure he's like top 3.
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I also wouldn't be surprised given how good he's been for so long.
I'm gonna look that up right now because I'm interested before we get out of here. He's second. He's second, believe it or not. He has 562 wins. That's right. He passed Patrick Wall last season at 551. Now he has 562 wins. Marty Brodeur, number 1 with 691.
That's an almost untouchable record.
Second, yeah. And it kind of helps when you play for a team that limits your shots to like 25 a night.
Yeah.
But yeah. Any final thoughts heading out of episode 168 here as we go into the weekend back to back with the Islanders and the Red Wings? 2 very, very winnable games that you should win.
Yeah, 100%. And it's another weird, like 3 to 4 day layoff in between games. So hopefully it gives guys like Zach Benson the time to get healthy, hopefully get him back in the lineup. And even a guy like Jack Quinn, maybe he hasn't felt 100% at the beginning of this season. Obviously, his lack of production has showed that. Hopefully that gives him some time to get on the ice and gain his confidence back along with Dylan Cousins. But I think getting the power play going over the weekend is obviously a huge deal. I think Zucker has, especially in the past 5 games, has proven his worth. I think he's made a lot of plays, and he's shown that he's got a little bit left in the tank. And a few of the other guys that we've talked about that they brought in, I think the fourth line has done exactly what they've been asked to do, which is forecheck hard, be tough to play against, be responsible in your own end, be good on the PK. We talked about Ryan McLeod, he's been good, and then we know that top line. So a little bit better performance from the defense, a little bit more consistency from the goalies. And I think after 20 games, we're sitting at 4-5-1 right now. Hopefully they'll at least have 10 wins. I think that would be disappointing if they didn't. And then maybe even more given how the schedule is shaking out and how they adjust following that beginning of the season road trip. I think they got into a little bit of a groove. Obviously 3 games in a row is way earlier than it was last year. And I think you're starting to see a little bit more jam from this group. So hopefully a little bit more production from the second and third lines. And then, you go from there and see what happens. But as our good friends on After the Whistle said, this team is going to be defined in the month of November. And personally, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm very encouraged by the way they play those, or like just the complete hockey games and how defensively they really tighten things up when protecting the lead, not getting down on themselves after giving up, not just giving up a lead, but going down early. Just that's the most encouraging things with this team so far. And I think hopefully you get these kids going again. Things will turn around. And you won't have to look outside the organization. Maybe the plan falls into place. My question to you, my final thoughts is, how did you enjoy that Bills Seattle game? And did you dress up?
Was that?
Did you guys? Did you and any of your friends dress up for Halloween for the game, or was anybody dressed up?
No, not for the game. But the atmosphere was insane. I think it kind of shone through on TV a little bit how many Bills fans there actually were. Which thinking about it logically, it makes sense given that they hadn't played there in 8 years, and it's a really cool place to visit. If anybody hasn't been to Seattle, it's one of my favorite cities I've ever been to. My sister has lived there for 18 years, so I've been probably 18, 20 times at this point. So I'm past all the touristy stuff, but the city itself is just truly amazing. The people are really cool. We didn't have a single issue with Seahawks fans the entire game, which was really nice. And of course, given how the game went, that potentially could have been an issue. But everybody kept saying that Bills fans were really honorable, and they felt that our honor in the way that we carry ourselves, they were happy to have us, which was really nice. It almost felt like a Midwestern vibe to it. We had a really good tailgate, and then I don't know if anybody saw, right as you exited the stadium, there was a guy playing live music on the drums, and he was taking requests from Bills fans. And then we all went up and we showed him Mr. Brightside. We were please play Mr. Brightside. And then it turned into one of the most amazing atmospheres I've ever seen. The rain was coming down. Everyone was dancing in the streets. It was unbelievable. So we had a really good time. And kind of like the Sabres, I'm really optimistic about the Bills. I feel as good about them as I have in a long time.
Yep.
The way the roster is constructed and how their key guys are performing at this current time, and the schedule's setting up pretty well right now. But yeah, it was a great trip, and I encourage everybody to get up to Seattle if they can.
Yeah, I feel very good about this Bills team right now. Getting Amari Cooper, seeing them merge to Keon Coleman, and just the way they're running away with some of these games. I know that was like their first win against a team with a winning record, but like they dominated Seattle. They absolutely did. Some things went their way, some good breaks, but like, if this, I don't see anybody touching them the rest of the way through. KC is going to be a big game. That's going to be a very, very interesting game when they play Kansas City. So is that at home? I'm not sure if that's home or away, but it's home. That's big. From Greg here real quick. I expect 20 out of 28 points in November. Very attainable given the teams the Sabres will play throughout the next month. I hope you're right, Greg. I really, really, really do.
And that would be, like we said, 10 out of 14.
Yep, exactly. And then Maria still wants to know, what is your Halloween costume? I was Michael Myers. Everybody knows that.
I'm actually dressing up. Me and my friend at work are dressing up as Paul Skeens and Livy Dunn. So
look at that. Who's Paul Skeens?
I'm going to be Skeens. I already have the Pirates jersey. I'm shaving the beard tomorrow night, and my good friend who's taller than me, but he is blonde. He's going to put on a wig. He's going to be Livy Dunn. So it's gonna be a good costume, and I'm sure we'll send out some pictures of it because she's been reposting some Skeens and Livy Dunn costumes already over the weekend. So hopefully Livy gives us a shout out. That'd be sick.
Yeah, and then we'll post it on the next episode. So I got nothing left. So as always, guys, thank you for hopping on, all you guys in the Peanut Gallery. Make sure you subscribe to us on Twitter, now X, Facebook, Instagram, and most importantly, YouTube. You can find us at 2 Goalies 1 Mic, and make sure you throw a like on there as well. Leave a comment like you guys do in the Peanut Gallery here. And as always, this has been brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room, with over 300 beers to choose from at all their locations. Whether you're going for a Sabres game, a Bills game, happy hour, live music, entertainment. Tim Britt is a regular at Fatty Beer. He performs the Sabres games now too. Always a great time to go see him whenever he is performing, or any of their other local live bands. Make sure you go check him out and tell him 2 Goalies 1 Mic sent you. I am Duane for Connor Hurls. This has been episode 160 of 2 Goalies 1 Mic. And as always, go Sabres.